Caster Rob is on the set. We've got our game to review right in the corner here. We're looking at Frozen versus JasonZhou. First game of the day, semifinals for the 2017 HCT World Championship on the set. Rob at the desk. Take it over. Take it over, Rob. First game of the day, baby. Woo! Let's go. More hype. That's what I'm talking about. Frozen versus JasonZhou. We have the control, or it could be Cube Warlock versus the Tempo Rogue. It looks like each player might have banned out the Highlander Priest. Looking at JasonZhou's hand, he puts away everything, even the Swashbuckler. Opens up with the Prince Deckhand hand, though. Oh my god. Frozen's gets the skull in his hand, which is the legendary Warlock weapon, which allows him to summon. Oh, the patches top deck off the top. All you see is smile from a JasonZhou, knowing that this is still looking bad, but he did happen to draw the Prince this game, which is always something that the Tempo Rogue is going to do. If you could draw Prince every game, knowing that you'd probably still draw patches, I'm pretty sure you would still rather take the Prince, even though you know you're going to draw patches. Frozen with the Galactic Crawler in his hand, definitely something you want to see against the Tempo Rogue, knowing that your opponent does have patches in the deck, along with, of course, the South Sea Captains, the deckhands, and the entire pirate package. So, definitely the Galactic Crawler is going to get value this game. The Doomguard is also a pretty good pickup, knowing that when he does play the Skull on turn 5 to be able to summon a demon on his hand as turn 6, that it definitely has a hit already. If he manages to pick up a cube, he's going to be pumping 3 Doomguards on turn 6, because the Doomguard will come down, it'll hit, he could cube the Doomguard, and then he'll be able to Dark Pack the cube to make 2 more Doomguards. So, 3 Doomguards on turn 6. Some say that is a power play. There's the buff deckhand off the top. Jason's just, he's holding back a little bit. He decided not to spend all of the 3 mana. He decided to dagger up, go face for 3 with the buff deckhand. Still pushing 5 damage though, putting the Warlock down to 21. Already a third of its life basically gone here. Frozen, again, Doomsayer in hand. Knows if he plays the Doomsayer, though, it's most likely going to get cleaned up with a Backstab or an SI agent. But it's 7 damage that he's not taking to the face. Galactic Crawler hitting the floor on the 3-2. Not exactly the best target, considering that you'd want to hit like a South Sea Captain. But still, killing a 3-2 and getting a 3-4 of your own. And he's throwing down the Doomsayer. Wow. That's an interesting play. So he wants to totally deny Jason a turn into his Skull, which makes sense because Frozen knows he's playing Skull on 5, which means his opponent's developing on 5. Then the Doomguard comes down. The Doomguard trades into whatever Jason plays on 5, and then if he happens to pick up the cube, which will be huge, like I said, he'll ever make 2 more Doomguards. So this Doomsayer plays a heads up. He just wanted to make sure this Doomsayer triggers, so he has that turn 5 to develop, and he doesn't have to worry about getting smacked in the face with rogue minions on that turn 5, because again, he's already going to be at 18 with just the Prince and the weapon swing. This Corridor is going to get a little bit of a buff, though, going down to already 3 mana. So here's the Skull, exactly what Frozen was planning to do. Again, Cube is the best draw for Frozen at this point. Shadow Step, so Jason doesn't really have a huge play here. He would have liked to seen maybe like a Scalebane Coin Firefly, but you know, a Corridor Creeper into maybe a deckhand to do a little bit more face damage with the Firefly isn't bad. He's still pushing 8 on board, but this Doomguard's going to be able to clean up that Corridor Creeper quite nicely, and then that Mortal Coil is going to be able to hit the 2-1, which gives him an extra draw to find that cube. The Defile, ooh. There is a Defile play. If he trades into the Corridor Creeper, he could technically Defile, killing the entire board. But it's not that great. But he does clean up the board, and then he'll be able to actually play the Spellbreaker. He'll be able to develop on his side, and Jason's hand really isn't that powerful. You know, Coin, Backstab, and Shadow Step aren't the most versatile, aggressive cards. You definitely want to, with his particular hand, like, let's say he were to pick up a Bone Mare or a Minstrel, then his hand becomes powerful. But at the moment, Jason's hand is very weak. There's the Mortal Coil to see if he can happen to draw into something to play for 5 mana here. Mistress, he decides to tap since the Mistress basically is 4 HP. He can afford to now take 2 more. Yo, Blaze with the sub coming in. First timer. Appreciate that, Blaze. Thanks for the sub, man. First sub of the day. Feels good. Very much appreciated. There's the trade into the Corridor Creeper, the Dark Pact on the Mistress. He could, in fact, heal for 12 here. What a heal from Frozen. Going right back up to 25. Jason's still at 30. The longer this game goes on, the higher percentage win rate Frozen has. Leroy is not what Jason wanted to see here. As strong as Leroy Shadow Step Leroy is, Frozen put himself out of range of the Leroy Shadow Step Leroy the second he decided to rip the Mistress off the top and then Dark Pact it. What's going on? Yo, Mental Gamer 7 months in a row. Very much appreciated, my man. Thank you so much. So Jason's going to clean up the Doomguard pretty easily here with the SI agent. Going face for 3 more damage, pushing Frozen almost back to the third of his life mark. I mean, if Frozen doesn't really draw that great of a card... I mean, he has a full clear with Hellfire regardless. There is the cube he was looking so desperately to find earlier. Hellfire is a complete clear here, but you got to keep in mind that Jason is still pushing 12 burst, not including the patches and weapon. So... As far as Jason is behind in regards to, like, being able to develop the board, I mean, this play is just so powerful. And he's able to Bone Marrow off the Captain because he kept the coin, so he's going to push 5 to his Dome, pushing lethal next turn. I mean, it went from Frozen looking like he was in a pretty good spot, being able to board clear and going above 20 health, to now all of a sudden Frozen can't seem to find one of his Void Daddies to pull out with the weapon. And he's in a spot where he really just doesn't have a lot. Wow. If Frozen doesn't either heal or play a taunt here, Leroy Shadow Step Leroy is just game. I mean, this is just the power of Tempo Rogue Burst, right? I mean, look at that Leroy Shadow Step. That's just 13 damage, chilling. That is just 13 damage. Sitting there, shaken, already baked, ready to be ate. Librarian to try to dig. Prince isn't going to help him. I think the first game is going to go to Jason. There's the Spellbreaker, and he's still just trying to dig for something to heal. I mean, he needs a Dark Pact, and even a Dark Pact is not enough. But the Mistress. The Mistress Dark Pact is the 12 heal, the 12-6, 12. Does this take him out of lethal range of the 13 into 17? He needs to go above 17 here. 21. It's just slightly out of range of Leroy Shadow Step Leroy now, am I right? Because we have 13 plus the 6, which is 19. Oh, but Leroy's 7, so it's 20. He's 1 off lethal. Oh, man. Frozen knew he had to heal there. He did. Frozen knows he has to heal to play around, let's say, a Leroy, but little does he know the Shadow Step is just right around the corner. So Jason is at this point now where he knows he has to go face, and he's trying to figure out the best way to push as much damage as possible without Frozen knowing exactly what's in his hand. And he might as well just try to get the Leroy hit in here before a Void Daddy comes down. Because if, let's say, Frozen does draw the Void Daddy, he's going to play it even if he has to wait. Even though waiting to summon it is for free is still good, obviously playing the Void Daddy is going to be what pulls him out of here. The Doom Guard. All right, let's see if we can see any cheesy plays here with the Doom. Hey, actually, there's no draw, there's no heal, and he's just dead to dagger next turn. This game is going to be Jason's. Because it doesn't matter what Frozen can do here. He cannot heal, and Jason always has dagger. I really like the heads-up play from Jason, though. Getting in that Leroy now before a taunt comes down, which gave Jason the out of drawing an SI agent. You know what I'm saying? So, like, let's say he held back Leroy, which most players would do. I don't have lethal with Leroy. Let's hold that back, right? Then, let's say Frozen top decks a Void Daddy. Jason plays Void Daddy. Now, all of a sudden, Jason has to push through the Void Daddy with the Leroy instead of just going ahead and putting the damage in now. And then if he happens to draw the Void Daddy, he has outs of cards like SI Agent and things of that nature, or even just the Silence, right? Like, let's say a Spellbreaker. But if he wouldn't have put that damage in the first place, he wouldn't even have the outs if the Voidwalker would have hit the floor. So the game number 1 goes to Jason. Tight spot, drew patches, but also drew Prince. So you can't really be too upset about that. That game was looking pretty good for Frozen up until he only drew one Void Guard, or one Doom Guard, which the weapon obviously pulled out on turn 6. But that's just not enough for to beat the Tempo Rogue. We need a little bit more aggression from Frozen on that behalf. We need to get those demons in the hand. We need to get them online. The weapon needs to get some value. In that game, the weapon just did not get enough value. I picked Muzzy Gap as my champion. All right, so we have a short interval here. Let's go on into game number 2. Let me look at their lineups one more time so I can get a little refresher from yesterday. Never mind, that's not their decks. All right, so here's game number 2, hitting the floor. JasonZhou up 1-0. It's the Highlander versus the Frozen's Dragon Highlander. Oh my gosh, was that I'm gonna go back to that just because I didn't realize they Jason banned out Frozen's Mage. Very interesting. I didn't get to see the bans on game number 1, so let's take a look at that one more time so we can see exactly what Jason was trying to target with that ban. We talked about here we have the Dragon Priest versus the just normal Highlander. But then it went over to something else that showed exactly what. There it is. So right here we have Frozen banning out Jason's. No. Jason banned out Frozen's Mage, and then Frozen banned out Jason's Warlock. So then we have Frozen's Warlock, Dragon Highlander, and Jade Druid versus Jason's most likely Jade Druid, Highlander, and Tempo Rogue. Wow, I can't believe Jason banned out the Mage and he left Druid and Priest on the floor. I wonder why Jason was so scared of that Mage. I mean, I guess if you saw Frozen play yesterday, it's pretty fucking scary. All right, let's head into the game number 2. All right, so Frozen, pretty strong hand. Nether Spy Historian, Glimmer Root, Power Ward, Shield. Those are all cards that Frozen wants to see. And the Dustbreaker, okay. Jason not being able, he doesn't have any combo pieces with the Raza and Anduin yet. He also has very limited draw with the Power Ward, Shield, and the Radiant Elemental, which is not something he normally wants to play. So Frozen actually, looking at these opening hand, Frozen definitely has a pretty, I wouldn't say a huge advantage, but definitely leaning toward Frozen here in the opening mulligan stages. Dragonoid Operative always looks really nice. Twilight Drake is the most annoying though. So what does Frozen want to go here? Does he want to go for the Operative, look for cards that might help him in the future for value purposes, or does he want to go for Twilight Drake, which has 4 attack, which is exceedingly hard for Jason to get rid of? So both those picks were very, very good. Looks like Frozen went for the Dragonoid Operative, which is probably the pick 80% of the time. I would imagine we're going to see the Curious Glimmer Root and or the Northshire Cleric here. Okay, the Curious Glimmer Root hits the floor. We'll see what comes out of it. Ooh, Frozen with the Anduin pickup from Curious Glimmer Root. The trade into the Loot Hoarder makes sense, so he doesn't take any chip damage. Plus, makes it so he can't makes it so Jason can't attack another 3/3 in Spirit Lash, which is actually in his hand. Shadow Vision's looking for probably draw here, so Mass Dispel also makes sense. He also could go with the Circle of Healing and maybe go for like a Wild Pyromancer, Alkalite of Pain shenanigan play, but neither of those cards in his hand, so Mass Dispel obviously makes the most sense. Going back to Frozen's turn, he could coin out Operative, or he could go with the Northshire Cleric heal trade. I personally like coining the Dragonoid Operative to get the most pressure on the board as fast as possible. And then also it plays around the Dragonfire Potion, which is going to come in 2 turns anyway. Because if he develops the Operative next turn, he basically says, I'm not pushing as much damage as possible. And it also, yeah. It looks like Frozen disagrees with me. It looks like he might go with the Northshire Cleric heal play instead of coining out the Operative. I mean, it's not that Frozen... Jason does have the Shadow Ward Death in hand, so even if he coins out the Operative, it would have died. But you got to keep in mind, when somebody's playing the Highlander Priest, they're only running 1 of cards. So in my opinion, the best strategy against the Highlander is to force them to have the cards. You know what I'm saying? If the deck only contains a 1 of, They either have it or they don't. When a deck contains 2 of, then it's a little bit more likely you'd play around cards like Dragonfire Potion on 6. But when there's only 1 of them in the deck, you put the pedal to the floor and you try to force them to have those cards. And if they don't, sometimes you can just pull a win off by coining out a pretty decent minion early on. Jason just throwing out the Priest of the Feast, not really doing too much there. The Operative on 5 makes complete sense for Frozen. These are some hard pickups, though. Mind Blast gives him reach he normally doesn't have. Lyra is value. Curious Glimmerroot is a mid-sized minion that also generates value. He goes with the Mind Blast. He's going to go with the burst damage that normally Jason would not expect. Because normally you expect the 1 Mind Blast, but when you start doubling up on those Mind Blasts, that's some thick daddy damage right there. Jason, knowing that the Dragonfire Potion does not clear the board, I expect him to Shadow Ward Death this Dragonoid Operative. Clean clear there. He's going to go ahead. He can definitely clean off the Netherspite Historian. If he wants, he can Shadow Ward Pain the 3/5. I like Shadow Ward Painting the 3/5, but he also could just heal face, because the 3/5 represents 3 damage a turn. If he heals for 2 every turn, it's only netting him -1. So it does make sense for him to almost ignore the 3/5 and save Shadow Ward Pain for maybe something like a Lyra down the road. Sorry guys, my voice is dying. Frozen has quite a bit of options here. It's hard to say. He's going to just go with the Dustbreaker. He has no dragons in hand. He just wants to put stuff on the board. The reason he plays the Dustbreaker all willy-nilly like this is because in this Priest matchup, the Priest normally doesn't really have that big of a board anyway, because all the minions in their deck are relatively small. So getting value out of cards like Dragonfire Potion and Dustbreaker aren't as prominent in the matchups where it's like Priest versus Priest, rather than matchup maybe where it's like a Priest versus like a Druid, an aggro Druid, or maybe a Shaman or a Rogue, right? You definitely want to get values out of your card that way. But that's why we saw Frozen not really caring about the Dustbreaker and just throwing them out there. Jason picking up the value trade there just to clean up the board as best as possible. We can see Frozen just continuously putting in the chip damage. The Scream, though, putting cards back into Jason's deck. And the reason he screamed this board is because he's basically disrupting Jason's deck so he doesn't draw his combo as quickly as possible, which is one of the best things you can do in this matchup. You can't necessarily stop your opponent from drawing, but you can, however, force them to draw cards that they normally wouldn't be drawing by putting cards that naturally aren't in their deck back in their deck that they've already played. And all of the cards that he put back into Jason's deck don't actually draw him cards immediately. Going for the Kazakus 5-mana potion. Mostly, this is the most picked potion you can find. I don't know the exact stats of the potion he picked. Summon 2 friendly minions and draw 2 cards. Definitely drawing 2 cards is a great thing for the Highlander Priest. And then the summon 2 minions, again, just that light pressure. There's the Shadow Reaper Anduin coming down that came off of the Glimmerroot from Frozen earlier on in the game. So Frozen is just looking for the Raza, which is so funny because Jason has the Raza, no Anduin. Frozen has the Anduin, no Raza. What a place to be. So Jason's got some good chip damage in here. He's pushing 6 just on the board. He could throw down the Raza, or he could throw down the Raza. I don't think there's, I guess he's thinking about, does he play the Kazakus potion or Raza? I personally like the Kazakus potion, now that I think about it, because drawing 2 outvalues playing a 5/5, because we haven't seen a Dragonfire potion come from Frozen yet, and a Dragonfire potion would clean up the board quite nicely. It looks like he just goes with the Operative to play around the Dragonfire potion. Jason valuing the chip damage more so than drawing, and more so than getting the Raza online. I like it. I like it a lot. Frozen with the double Mind Blast Velen in hand. He also has coin. So he's pushing technically 20 damage from hand. Frozen is 2 damage off Lethal right now. That is crazy shenanigans. Oh my god. JasonZhou has no idea that Frozen is pumping this thick daddy damage. He just has no idea. Frozen gets a nice board clear, again, healing himself back up to 30, killing off some of those little minions, making sure that Jason does not get that chip damage in there. Frozen hitting Jason in the head for 2, putting him at that 20. And that 20 is exactly where Frozen wants Jason to be. That 20 represents lethal next turn if Jason doesn't heal. He's going ahead and silencing the cleric and going to put the extra 2. And this is a super heads up play from Frozen because he knows Jason's going to heal his face, right? And if he heals his face, he'll go back up to 22, which is again 2 damage out of range from the double Mind Blast Velen. So by using silence to silence his own cleric, Jason's like, what the actual fuck? Why would he do that? That doesn't make any sense. To pump 2 more damage, you're willing to silence a card that draws him into a Raza, which obviously Frozen doesn't have yet. So Jason has to reconcile, he has to understand that Frozen's got a plan. And if he doesn't disrupt this plan, he's going down. He's going down real fast. Jason needs to find heal or it's just all ogre. Oh, man. That's why Jason is taking such a long time in this turn. It's not necessarily a turn that if Frozen didn't do what he did the turn before, I think Jason would have played this completely differently. But right now, he's just staring at this like he knows. He knows impending doom is upon him. And there it is. Frozen just has lethal. He can't heal past that 20 mark. Jason puts his hand over his mouth, knowing that Frozen had some sort of plan. And there's the double Mind Blast. And that just shows how powerful picking up that extra Mind Blast could be in the early game. I mean, he had an option, I believe, I don't remember the exact choices, but there was other good choices besides a Mind Blast, but he decided to get that extra reach, which makes complete sense. I mean, even without the Raza, you can still do that Velen Mind Blast, and he had coins, so he knew he was going to be able to play 2 Mind Blasts in the single turn. Game number 2 goes to Frozen. So Highlander out of the way for Frozen. Tempo Rogue still out of the way for Jason. Makes sense, makes sense. Let's check out the following game. Let's see what they decided to queue up with in their game number 3. Oh shit. Went too far. Go back. There we go. All right, so it looks like the aggro Druid versus Frozen's Jade Druid. I would prefer to be the Jade Druid in this matchup because Spreading Plague absolutely wrecks the aggro Druid as long as they don't get like double or triple buffs. So, oh my god, Patches in the hand again for Jason. This is the second time Patches has been in the hand of his deck. First, it was the Rogue, but he happened to draw Prince. This time, there's no Prince in the deck. That feels bad, man. He's going to go with the Taunt here to protect his 1-2. And I don't think he ever trades here. I think he just tries to push as much damage face because the 1-1's going to die to the 1-5 anyway. And if he attacks in with the 1-2, it kind of makes it weak to swipe later on in the game. There's the Jade Blossom ramp from Frozen. Makes complete sense. He has the Innervate in hand as well, so he happens to draw like maybe a Jade Behemoth later on. Or a Nourish. He's going to be able to play that next turn. The Marquia Shards landing on the Beast, of course. Now it's a 3-7. The question is for Jason right now is, does he make trades or does he go face? I, again, personally like going face. And then does he play Patches or does he not play Patches? Goes with the trade into the 1-1. I wonder what that trade was about there. Because now, if Frozen plays Swipe, he gets to pick off these little creatures. And there's not really a better play here. So I really like Swipe onto the 3-7. Branching paths to draw. Okay. This is interesting because Jason had a buff here. That would have been really bad for Frozen. I mean, unfortunately, Jason doesn't have the buff. So now, you know, it's not like these 1 HP minions are going to be very resilient to the swipe the following turn. But, I mean, I guess you could stick them around to keep the Spreading Plague up, right? But at the same time, you know your opponent's going to play Living Mana eventually. So why wouldn't you just play Spreading Plague into Living Mana, right? Cut your outs. Know that you can kill these little minions now. Knowing that your opponent's going to Spreading Plague later, or going to Living Mana later. And then you Spreading Plague into Living Mana, right? And then on top of that, you know living mana's not going to get buffed because you haven't seen a Mark of the Lotus, which means he has to top deck it. So I would have much rather saw a swipe there. So here's the Innervate Spreading Plague, which is exactly what Frozen was setting up for the turn before when he didn't swipe. So this is why he didn't swipe. But now, Jason's going to be able to clean this up very easily with a Savage Roar. And then he still has the living mana in the hand, which means now Frozen is in a really tight spot, in my opinion. He only has 5 mana, only found 1 piece of ramp, no nourish, does have branching paths, but that's going to take up 4 mana just to draw 2 cards. So I feel like this next turn is going to be like a Violet Teacher, Lesser Spellstone, maybe like a Mark of the Lotus turn from Frozen. But even then, he's gonna be pretty far behind. So Jason's thinking about, does he Savage Roar now or does he not? I really like the Savage Roar here. So makes those easy GG trades. Face goes into the other Spreading Plague. Now gets handed over to Frozen. Let's see what Frozen does. Oh my gosh, the second Lesser Spellstone pickup is pretty big. The question, does Frozen value the swipe double Spellstone, or does he want to play the Teacher and then double Spellstone? That's the question of the day. So let's say he swipes, he could Spellstone both. He could clear the board with a swipe double Spellstone. That is a full clear. Or he goes Violet Teacher double Spellstone, and then he could clear off just 1 minion. But then he also has 4 minions on Frozen's side. So it's Frozen wants to go generate 4 minions, leave 3 on the opposing side, or does Frozen want to go for the full clear, leave 1 minion on his side? This is a tough question to ask because Frozen has not seen a living mana yet. And Jason's like, if you clear my board, a Lamau living mana's in the bank. And Frozen's like, well, he only has 1 card in hand. If it's not living mana, I should probably clear his board. And I think Frozen is actually going to go for the board clear here. Oh, he decides the Violet Teacher double Spellstone. Kill 1 minion, go face for the 1/2, generate 4. Like I said, there's the 2 options there. I'm very surprised he took this route. This is the more aggressive. If you don't have a buff, this is the play. Thank you, Jeff. Glad you're enjoying the channel, man. Top decks the second living mana. Wow. So we're going to see the double trade here. We might see the first living mana hit the floor just to get it out, just to get this card online, because he already picked up the second one. If he would have maybe picked up the minion there or a buff, we might have saw the buff instead of the living mana to see if we can get a clear or a swipe, then the living mana. He kills that, follow it up with the living mana. Now Frozen's really in a tight spot here. Most likely 100% going to see a swipe hit the floor, but he could be a little willy-nilly. He could pick up the branching paths instead. I personally like the swipe, but Frozen has no idea that the second living mana is lying wait. Oh man, I got the hiccups all of a sudden. There's the swipe coming down. We'll see a hero power. We'll see a trade, a 3/5 into a 2/1, and probably will we see a hero power into one of the 2/1s or into the 1/1? I like killing off the 1/1 because it's a beast on the board and it stops Jason from being able to draw Markia shards to buff it and then draw an additional card. So I like the killing off of the 1/1 rather than killing off one of the 2/1s. Even the 2/1 has more attack. The beast represents more of a threat because of the Mark of Yashard's top deck. Very weak top deck from Jason there. The Firefly, not exactly what he wanted to see, but again, still pressure on the board, still has that living mana in hand. Frozen is not out of the woods yet. Even though the board has been semi-stabilized with very little minions, he's going to be able to kill 2 more off next turn. He's still in a tight spot because of that second living mana sitting in Jason's hand. So it looks like Frozen's going for the armor here. Makes sense. He does not need any card draw because of the double UI in his hand. So it would have made no sense for Frozen to draw there, knowing that next turn he's drawing 5 cards anyway. So there's the hero power into the second living mana, filling up the board. This is going to be a tight one for Frozen. There's a lot of damage sitting on the board now. 12 damage next turn. 13 with hero power from Jason. So we'll probably see a UI onto a 2/2. Oh, maybe we'll see a Jade Behemoth. I would rather see the UI. I'd rather pick up some cards, try to find that second Spreading Plague. There's the UI onto the 1/2. Okay. So he's not killing off one of the Treants, which is interesting because most cards in Jason's deck would allow him to be played. Even if, let's say, he would have hit a Treant, the Corridor Creeper would still cost 5, meaning he wouldn't be able to play it anyway. Oh, there is the Spreading Plague pickup from Frozen from the UI. This is perfect. That was exactly what he wanted to hit with that UI. So it looks like Jason is going to go for the trades into the 5/1 to be able to play the Corridor Creeper this turn. Okay. He's also going to be able to weave in a hero power, so he's going to be pushing 7 more this turn. And what I see here from Frozen, it's going to be a Violet Teacher Spreading Plague, or it's just going to be a Spreading Plague Oaken Summons. I like the Spreading Plague Oaken Summons a little bit more than the Violet Teacher, because if you play the Violet Teacher first, you make 1 less taunt, which taunt is pretty important right now for Frozen. And with the Oaken Summon, it's going to probably drag Fandral out of his deck, which is going to be able to combo really well with the, if he picks up like a Wrath. So he's going with the Spreading Plague Oaken Summons. Like it a lot. Let's see if it rips the Fandral out. Fandral was exactly what the card ripped out.
Still planning to tune in every episode or rewatch what I missed.
Yo, Tony, thanks for the resub, man. 4 months in a row. Welcome back, my dude. Thank you so much, man. So this is a pretty fearsome board from Frozen right now. And Jason is staring at 2 Southsea Captain in his hand. Not really the position you want to be in with the aggro Druid. You would have wanted this game to get wrapped up last turn of the turn before. The longer this game goes on, obviously, the longer the Jade Druid is able to come back in the game with cards like UI, Jade Behemoth, and just ramping of the Jades in general. Swipe pickup from Frozen. Pretty nice. He's going to be able to clean up that Corridor Creeper if he likes. I personally... it's hard to say. It's between Swipe, Jade Behemoth, and Teacher. It looks like Frozen likes the Violet Teacher Swipe play. From there, his Captain's going to go to 3 HP. Allows an easy trade with Fandral. And all of these 1/3 taunts are going to be able to pick up easy pickings on the little Treants due to the fact that Swipe was able to bring their health down to the 1 because it hits everything for 1 on the board. And there's a Konsamida from Jason, knowing that once that second Swipe hit the floor, the opposing board has 7 creatures on it. There is no possible way the aggro Druid was coming back from that situation. Frozen is up 2-1 in the semifinals against Jason. What a game. Moving to game number 4. What decks will we see being played against each other right here? Both players, Jason with a smile on his face, Frozen in pure concentration right now. We have the Highlander Priest from Jason versus what seems to be the Cube Lock from Frozen. I think the Cube Lock actually, if Frozen was playing the Control Lock in this matchup, I would say the Control Lock is definitely at a severe disadvantage. The Cube Lock has a much better chance against the Highlander Priest because it's able to put a lot of pressure with the Doom Guards and Cubes. So definitely in a much better position for Frozen. Because he's playing the Cube Lock and not the Control Lock. So Jason does have the Raza and Kazakus in hand, really just looking for Anduin. Has the Novice Engineer for cycle, Blood Mage for cycle, Cleric for cycle. So Jason's his hand is very, very good. Meanwhile, Frozen already has a Skull in his hand, a Void Daddy, and a Cube. Oh my gosh, both hands extremely thick at this time. These are 2 thick daddy hands coming at each other live. We got the Spellbreaker onto the Blood Mage to stop the draw. Makes perfect sense. Frozen identifies that the only way that Jason's deck functions properly is being able to cycle into his power cards as quickly as possible. If you can put a stop to that cycle, at least, you know, slow it, you'll be able to slow the combo, which allows Frozen to put together his pieces a little bit quicker than the Priest. Jason drops the Kazakus again, 5 mana potion. Not too crazy there. Jason looks up around. He's all about. He's trying to think whatever is the best pick to this final part of the potion. I didn't get to see what it is, but let's take a look. Summon a 5/5 demon and deal 5 damage. Not exactly the best because he's definitely looking for draw 2, but still not a bad potion. There are still much worse. Frozen obviously plays the weapon on 5. He's got Void Daddy in hand along with 2 cubes. Obviously, Frozen would have preferred to see Doomguard here, but the Void Daddy is still very, very good. And it's going to allow the Frozen to go face instead of dealing with these small minions because he's going to have to deal with the taunt. The only way that Jason is ever going to not have to deal with the taunt is cards like Scream, but he actually want to keep Scream until his opponent Gul'dans. But if he ends up screaming early, Gul'dans will actually get a good amount of value. So there's the Void Daddy hitting the floor. We'll probably even see maybe a trade into a cube. Oh my god, what a pickup from Frozen. Was able to get the Dark Pact off the top. Has 2 cubes in hand. Oh, I didn't even notice. He already had a Dark Pact in his hand. Frozen's already cock-locked and loaded, and I didn't even see it. That Dark Pact was like wiggled in the corner over there. I didn't even see it hiding it out. So there's the cube. And then he didn't even... oh, yeah. Void Daddy can't attack first because the weapon summoned it. And now he's going to Dark Pact the cube. He's going to create 2 Void Daddies. And this is... oh, my gosh. Mass to spell from the top from Jason. Not only is he going to be able to now ignore the Void Daddies because they're not going to have the taunt and or death rattle. He's going to be able to cycle with this Mass to spell. Or he could coin into the Scream. Jason's got some serious options here. Coin into Scream, fill your opponent's deck with cards like Voidwalker, which are really bad, you know, top decks. Or go ahead with the Silence and push damage face. I would like to see the Mass Dispel here. And the reason being is that currently he's only pushing 9 damage, the Warlock. And then Jason's going to be at 30 at the end of this turn. I don't think the Scream was worth it yet there. So it looks like Jason is going for just the clear. Put as many Voidwalkers on the floor, and then maybe he's going for the Scream next turn. Because he wants to put, again, Voidwalkers in Frozen's deck. But all Frozen knows he has to do is trade the Voidwalkers into the 5/4s and 5/5s. They're not going to stick around. So Jason's plan to be able to Scream a bunch of 1/3s isn't really there, knowing that they're going to be able to just trade away. Or maybe Jason's just holding the Scream for Gul'dan, period. Regardless of how many Voidwalkers are on the floor. So there's the gain 3, draw 1 from Frozen. Frozen's looking for cards like Doomguard, which he just picked up. What a nice draw from Frozen. That Doomguard will be hitting the floor next turn for free because of Gul'dan's weapon. Frozen's wondering how to make these trades. I definitely would want to trade off these 1/3s because I do not want to get screamed. So we see the 1/3s getting traded into the 5/4s to make sure they die. Good heads up from Frozen here. Good heads up. Knowing that he does not want to get screamed. And then the rest of it just goes face. Perfect. Alright, now Jason picked up a greater healing potion. Doesn't actually do anything that crazy right here. Definitely doesn't want to scream. Mass Dispel would have been better last turn, but going to use it this turn to be able to cycle a little bit more. He also still has the Loot Hoarder in hand. There's the Anduin. Ooh, daddy. Throws down the heal on himself. Hits the Loot Hoarder. Or he hits the face with 2 chip damage. Not too crazy there. But every little bit counts. The Doomguard hits the floor because of the weapon. It has charge. It's fully active, cocked, locked, and loaded. There's a Prince pickup, which he got. So what we could see here is a Prince on Doomguard, and then Cube on the little Doomguard that came from Prince, and then Dark Pact the Cube to make 3 Doomguards. And then he has the Gul'dan in 2 turns from now, which is most likely going to bring back at least 2 more Doomguards. What Frozen doesn't know is that there's the Greater Healing Potion in Jason's hand, which is going to basically allow him to survive an extra turn because of the burst healing. Also, if he has the 3 Doomguards on the floor, it gives Jason a wonderful scream. So right now, Frozen, it's stuck between a rock and a hard place. He knows if he goes in with the Doomguard play that Scream is just around the corner. And if Scream isn't there, Anduin probably is too. So he knows with these Doomguard play that they're most likely going to get cleared this turn. But that's not the worst thing in the world, because he knows if Anduin ends up killing the Doomguards, right, that they'll get brought back with the Gul'dan. So it looks like he's going to Prince the Cube, which I think is a half and half play, right? Because if you're going to Prince the Cube and not the additional Doomguard, you get to play this. Oh my gosh, what a play from Frozen. So Frozen identifies that Mass Dispel was played, which means that the cubes are not going to get silenced. And if Jason ends up playing the Anduin, the cubes don't die. Frozen procs them the next turn, then goes face. But the problem here is Jason still has Scream. That's the problem. So it looks like the Scream is going to hit the floor and it's going to nullify both these cubes. Wow. What sad, sad Doomguards. They were once big and mighty, and now they've been locked away inside of a cube to get returned to the deck forever. The cubes no longer will obtain any value. I think there's one more Void Daddy in the deck, and I guess that's the max cube value we're going to see right now. So here's the Anduin hitting the floor. The reset of the hero power. We see Mind Blast in hand from Jason. We see a slight smile knowing that his Velen, or his Anduin is online with the Raza bonus. He still has Velen in the deck, but Mind Blast already in hand. He still has a ton of cards and a ton of value. Jason is definitely chilling. And Taunt doesn't even stop the burst. You're exactly right. So regardless if Void Daddy hits the floor or not, the Anduin hero power says, I don't care. I'm going to shoot these little black balls of darkness at you for 2 damage. And if he has Velen, it's 4 damage. Which is why Velen is so powerful in this deck. And on top of that, Jason still has coin. Which means at any point in time when Jason decides to draw Velen, he's going to be able to do at least 28 damage, if not more, due to the fact that he has Coin, Holy Smite, and the Mind Blast in hand. I wouldn't even be surprised based on how much damage Jason has that he could actually wipe up this game in 2 turns or less with the amount of low-cost spells in his hand. The problem here, though, is that Frozen is going to go ahead and Gul'dan. He's going to gain 5 extra armor, which actually does mean a lot in this matchup. And on top of that, he's going to be able to life steal for 3 each turn, which is basically absorbing 1.5 of Jason's hero powers. So right now, Jason is, do I push face damage or do I clear the board? I personally like cleaning up the board because this is Frozen's last 2 raw. So once you clean up this board and you deal with at least the heavy minions like Doomguard, then you can go away and start chipping face damage, knowing exactly where your opponent is and how much burst they have. Because the entire deck that Frozen is running, its burst comes with Doomguards. Once you take care of the Doomguards, you take care of the cubes, which Jason has done, you can calculate exactly how much damage the deck can do, especially after Gul'dan's already been played, right? So once you can get the board down, which is exactly what Jason is doing, right now Jason says, hey, your deck's going to do a hero power and you have 4 damage on board, which means the max damage you're going to do is most likely 7, which means he's at 22, can live for at least 3 turns, and then from now Jason can just use his hero power and keep chipping down Frozen, and it's only going to take 1 to 2 turns before Frozen's going to be out of life, regardless of the heal for free, just because how much value in Jason's hand. Like, there's not... This is a super tight spot. This is exactly where the Highlander Priest wants to be. And this is exactly where the Cube Block does not want to be. The Doomguard's gone. The cubes have been screamed. The Gul'dan's been dealt with. The Raza and Anduin are out. They're cocked. They're locked. They've already loaded. They're shooting little fiery balls. Frozen's just trying to heal for as much as he can, and Jason's just sitting here picking off the life, slowly but surely, turn after turn, dealing at least 6 to 12 damage. There's the Lyra. Here comes the Power Ward Shield to generate some extra value. We still have Coin. We still have Holy Smite. A Power Ward Shield was picked up by the random effect of Lyra generating a spell That's insane. Silence comes down from visions. We see a probe coming down. These hero powers are just picking Frozen away. There is nothing more triggering than seeing Anduin hit you for 2 damage repeatedly, and there's just nothing in your deck that can stop this. I mean, it has to be the worst thing to be in. It's just like this little fucking hero power hitting you for 2 every turn. It's just like poke, 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 and eventually you're dead. And you can't stop the pokes. You just can't stop the pokes. Poke OP. There's the Holy Smite. Lyra has generated an immense amount of value this turn. Frozen was at 30, already at 12. No demons in hand, weapon doing nothing. He has double Mistress Hellfire, but that's really not going to stop the damage that Jason's just going to put out. As good as the Siphon Life hero power is from the Warlock, the Anduin Raza combo, it's just too much damage. JasonZhou is just going to go ahead and clean up this game. I believe this is lethal right here. Just going ahead, going through the motions. He goes ahead and plays Priest with the Feast. Not only is he dealing 2 damage poke per little ping to his opponent, he's healing for 3 every time a spell gets played. Alright, so it wasn't lethal yet, but it will be lethal soon. Putting Frozen back to 9. Frozen does have the double Mistress in his hand. Voidwalker gets pulled from the hand for free. What a value play there. And there's the Kansamida hitting the floor with Frozen. It's up 2-2. Frozen at 2, Jason at 2. Clear victory with the Highlander Priest there. Again, one of the strongest decks in the game for that exact reason. Doesn't care about taunts, doesn't care about board states. Draw, draw, draw. Raza, Anduin, ping, ping, ping. Poke, poke, poke. Heading into game number 5, the match decider against Frozen and JasonZhou, hitting off the aggro Druid versus the Q block. I really like the Q block in this particular matchup. Defile, Hellfire, the Lesser Spellstone. Cards like this really makes it difficult for Jason to be able to establish a board in the early game, which is exactly what the aggro Druid is supposed to do. Jason looking at his hand, Blood Corsair, Living Mana, Bittertide, and Mark. Keeps the Corsair, keeps the Bittertide, keeps the Mark. Very interesting keep. I like it a lot. Normally, people playing the aggro Druid would not keep the Bittertide Hydra in their opening hand, but knowing that Frozen's deck doesn't run Siphon Souls, it has no way to deal with a turn 4 Bittertide if he coins it out. So I really like the heads up from Jason, knowing exactly what the Q block is weak to, and that's exactly why the Bittertide Hydra was held in the opening hand, to guarantee that that guy comes down. Mistress, good pick from Frozen there. Dropping it on turn 1, regardless of him not taking damage. He just wants to get a minion on board because it stops Jason from being able to play the Raven. It gives Frozen the ability to trade early on, which makes the buffs from Jason even worse. Go ahead, life tap for 2. It's going to get healed up with the Mistress anyway. Jason's at a really hard spot here. We're going to probably see the hero power. Ooh, he's just going to go with the fill the board up with minions. Will we see the patches trade into the 2-1? We will. This nullifies the effect of Mistress to only healing for 2 instead of 4. Frozen's going to probably tap again, and then he's going to go ahead and Lackey. And this is correct ordering because you want to tap because you could actually tap into a Spellstone, and then you want to Lackey last because if you have a Spellstone that you got from your tap, you'll get the effect. But let's say you Lackey and then you tap, and if you tap into a Spellstone last, that actually doesn't get the effect because the tap only triggers when you take damage from dealing damage from yourself through spells or minions, not from the tap itself. So correct ordering from Frozen there. Jason's going to buff the board. Pretty resilient so far. We might see a Spellbreaker. We might see a Hellfire. I would personally... I would like to see the Spellbreaker on the Raven. The reason being is that you know Jason has kept a card in the opening hand, which is the Hydra, and you know he has coin, right? So you know he's probably going to plan to coin out a Hydra. Because he hasn't used coin, which is one of the things aggro Druid loves the most. They love that coin and they love to use it for the burst, right? And he kept a card in the opening hand, so which means if you go ahead and you coin the Spellbreaker, he has to trade with 2 minions because you know Jason's not going to hero power because he's been planning to coin Hydra this entire time. He goes with the Hellfire, which is the board clear that allows him to play around the buff into Savage Roar, which is also Jason was able to pick up a Savage Roar there, but the Hydra is going to hit the floor regardless. So Frozen's tight spot here. The Faceless Manipulator could copy the 8/8, which guarantees that probably a trade the following turn, but we know that Jason does have the Mark of Yasharj in his hand, allowing the Hydra to be able to basically go face for 10 and then not die to the other Hydra. We could see the Spellstone onto the Hydra, and then we could see a Hellfire to follow that up next turn. I would like to see the preemptive Spellstone into the Hellfire here. It plays around living mana next turn, it plays around the buff on the Hydra, and it also doesn't allow you to play a minion and then it just get ignored because he does have the Mark of Yasharj in his hand. So we'll see if he goes for the Spellstone into the Hellfire trade. I know it's a lot of damage up front, but you're going to be able to deal with the board in 2 turns. Hard play from Frozen here. This is definitely not a great position to be in. He also could just play the cube out. And the cube is still representing a way to kill the Hydra. So there's the Spellstone for 7. He's setting up for the Hellfire next turn. Great play from Frozen. Exactly what I would have done. So there's the Mark hitting the Hydra. This is what Frozen was playing around by not Faceless Manipulating the Hydra. There's the Savage Roar. This is some big daddy damage right here. I mean, we're looking at 18 damage coming into the face of Frozen, putting him at 8. Now if Frozen decides he wants to Hellfire, he's taking an additional 3, really hoping that he would have just drawn either a Mistress of Mixtures or another Spellstone to be able to heal himself back up. Good news is for Frozen that Void Daddies are right around the corner, but unfortunately he still has to wait 2 turns. He does have the Dark Pact in hand, so if he manages to draw any form of minion, he's going to be able to hit the Lackey with the Dark Pact and or a Mistress of Mixtures, which is exactly what he wants to do, but none of those cards are currently in his hand. Frozen now knows he has to Hellfire, but the question is, does he tap after the Hellfire or does he not tap? Because if he taps, he could get closer to the weapon or a Mistress of Mixtures. But if he holds back the tap and he sits at 5 life, he has to think, all right, what if my opponent hero powers me over 2 turns and then happens to draw some form of creature that can do at least 3 damage, which is highly likely. So he goes ahead and he gets the tap and he finds the Mistress of Mixtures into the Hellfire. What a play. Oh my God. Frozen with the tap. He's going to be able to Mistress in. Oh, wow. He's going to be able to Mistress into the cube. If you, no, I think that's too cheesy. We're not doing that. We're probably just going to Mistress Dark Pact cube. I think that's the safest play to do. Because if you do with some cheesy, Mistress, Cube, Dark Pact, that create 2 more Mistresses, heal for 8. Oh, I don't know. Maybe that's the play. Maybe it is the Mistress, Cube into Dark Pact. Because then he actually generates the 4, he generates the 8, and he gets 2 more Mistresses to be able to heal back up. It's cheesy, but I like cheese. Jason knows. Jason, you can see in his eyes that the opponent has healing. And taunts. And taunt is cheat. And healing is cheatier. He's just dropping as many minions as he can. He needs to fit in. He needs to weave in a hero power to try to do as much damage as possible. I would like to see Frozen do the cheesy play with the Mistress Cube into Dark Pact to generate 2 more Mistresses. Not only does it heal you for the 12, it also puts 2 more 2/2s on the board that heal you for an additional 4. I like it a lot. This is exactly what Frozen is going for. Goes for the 12 heal, makes 2 more Mistresses. You can see Jason's disgust. I mean, he's just like, are you kidding me? This healing, this top deckedness, double Mistress now, and he only has 2 Fireflies on the board. He's got the 3/4 and the 1/2, and it's just not enough damage to push through the 14. And if he ends up pushing through the Mistresses, he's not only healing his opponent, but he's also going to be playing into Defile. Goes for the trades, gonna kill off 1 of the Mistresses, throwing out the living mana, and is again pushing in lethal with the living mana top deck. What a nice top deck from Jason here. So we're looking at, we're just looking at lethal next turn if he cannot clean this up. There's the Spellbreaker Oh my gosh, that Defile is gonna be big. Trades, brits it down to 1 HP, throws out the Defile, clears up the Living Mana, heals for an additional 4, throws out the Galaka Crawler, knowing that he just wants to put a minion on the board regardless if it's actually gonna kill Captain or not. Another Living Mana top deck hits the floor for Jason, allowing him maybe the hope of being able to Living Mana. He doesn't have a Hellfire, he doesn't have a Taunt, he doesn't have a Defile. Jason smirks, he lurks at his screen, he knows his only out is to be able to throw down the Captain and then the Living Mana. Can't fit in the hero power. Oh boy. Frozen sees those Void Daddies in his hand. He throws down a Void Daddy. He knows Daddy is the way. Jason scratches his head. This is going to be a tight one. This is going to be, this is not looking good for Jason. Once the Void Daddies hit the floor, especially with Frozen having 2 Void, like, I don't think there's any way the Aggro Druid comes back from this, because not only does Frozen have the Void Daddy, he goes Void Daddy into Void Daddy. Jason, if he even can, manages to get through the Void Daddies, then he throws down the Gul'dan, bringing back more Void Daddies and Void Walkers. I mean, this is just wrapped up for Frozen here. And this all came down to the play where Frozen was able to deal with the Hydra efficiently, right? He set up the play that Hydra wouldn't make an easy trade with Faceless Manipulator. He decided, I'm going to deal 7 to it. I'll deal with it the next turn. I'm accepting to take 8 damage. He's going to be able to lifesteal from 7 for the Spellstone anyway, because it does 7, heals for 7. Therefore, the Hydra is really only doing 1 damage. And it worked out perfectly for Frozen in this situation. Ostra, the Mistress of Mixtures pickup there was exceedingly huge as well. So there's this Faceless Manipulator hitting the floor. The Doomsayer comes down because it really doesn't matter for Frozen if the board gets cleared, because he can clearly just play Gul'dan the following turn anyway. There's the concede for Jason. Frozen is so excited to have wrapped up. Frozen heading to the grand finals. Oh my gosh. Frozen is ecstatic with joy. To the grand finals, Frozen will go. You can see the excitement on this young man's face. I mean, that is a place to be. I mean, if you're a Hearthstone player, you can only dream to have made it to not only the World Championships, but to qualify and make your way to the top grand finalist. He only has 1 more match to win, and he will be crowned champion. Will Frozen be it? Not sure. Let's check out our next game, Tom vs. Surrender.